Are you looking for the perfect gift for that very special geek in your life? Well, after 10 years, we finally got around to setting up a page for Geek's Guide to the Galaxy t-shirts over at Threadless.com. Big thanks to our logo artist, Blake Reynolds, for the cool designs, and to our marketing manager / my girlfriend, Steph Grossman, for setting up the page and selecting the various options. There are lots of styles and colors to choose from, so collect them all over at geeksguide.threadless.com. So that's geeksguide.threadless.com. Alright, so now let's get to our show.
Wired.com presents The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. And here is your host, David Barr Kirtley.
Hello, and welcome to episode 391 of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. Today on the show, we'll be discussing Final Space, a science fiction cartoon created by YouTube star Olin Rogers. And this will include spoilers for seasons 1 and 2 of the show, so just be aware of that. And I'm joined by 3 guests. So first up, we've got Andrea Kail, making her 11th appearance on the show. She's a graduate of the Odyssey Writers Workshop, and her short fiction appears in the Writers of the Future anthology, Fantasy Magazine, and Lightspeed. She's the former script supervisor for Late Night with Conan O'Brien, and is currently a staff writer at WWE's Friday Night SmackDown. So Andrea, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back, Dave.
Then next up, we've got Tom Gerencer, making his 10th appearance on the show. His short fiction appears in magazines such as Realms of Fantasy and in books such as New Voices in Science Fiction. His nonfiction book Think Like Google is out now, and his short story All Our Donkeys Were in Vain appears in the new anthology The Best of Galaxy's Edge 2015 to 2017. So Tom, welcome to the show.
Glad to be back.
And also joining us today is Robert Repino, who you may remember from our panel on the Orville back in episode 288, and from our panel on Disenchantment back in episode 324. He's the author of the novels Mort, Dark, and Cul-de-sac, and its new novel Spark and the League of Ursus will be out in April. So Robert, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Okay, so the first thing I want to mention is just, had any of you heard of this show, Final Space, before I emailed you about it?
No.
Nope.
No.
Yeah, see, that's the feeling I got. I mean, I only know about it because I came across it on iTunes, and I was kind of like, oh, what is this? I had not heard of Olin Rogers. I gather he's reasonably well-known YouTuber, but I wasn't familiar with him. And I haven't really heard anyone talk about this show, so I don't know how popular it is, but they did do 2 seasons of it, and it's been renewed for a 3rd season, so I guess it must be doing all right. But so sort of my experience was I watched the first episode, and I was kind of like, I wasn't that impressed, and so I sort of stopped at that point. And then a couple of months went by, and I was kind of like, I'm always saying there should be more science fiction humor, and I didn't really give this show a whole lot of a chance. So I went back and I gave it another chance. And actually, when I watched the first episode the second time, I was like, oh, this is actually better than I remember. But I thought the show was just sort of okay for like 6 episodes or so. Maybe I'll stop there. But that was kind of my initial impressions. Like, not blown away, but I decided to give it a chance. But so how about Robert? What were your first impressions of Final Space?
Yeah, I actually want to start by giving a serious compliment that might not sound that serious, but I mean it, which is I think I would have really loved the show if it had come out when I was much younger, like 13. Mm-hmm. And I think the show made me think a lot about the challenges of writing in this format. Because it's a 20-minute episode, it's serialized story, so you got 20 minutes to get people's attention, zip them along in the story, set up the next episode, and then, tell us a little bit about the characters between there. So it made me think a lot about that. But having said all that, I can't really recommend this one. I think it sets up expectations that it's going to be a little more substantive than just a light, breezy cartoon. It even has a lot of very emotional moments that are really like beating you over the head and saying like, yes, now's the time to cry, everybody. And I felt like some of those moments felt unearned, and I just didn't think the show lived up to those expectations. I think the main reason why it doesn't is because I think the Gary character is just seems incoherent to me. The show can't really decide if he's like the super sweet guy or if he's just a totally incorrigible, amoral asshole in a lot of places. I have way more to say about that, but I should let the other panelists go, I think.
So, Andrea, first impressions of Final Space.
If I hadn't agreed to do this, I would never have finished the first season. I didn't hate it. My first thing I wrote down was cute. But as Robert said, it's the main character. The main character is supposed to be the voice of the viewer, and he was screaming half the time, as he said, incoherent, made no sense, and you couldn't feel for him in any way. And also, just as a woman, a guy sending a letter a day to a woman for 5 years who wants nothing to do with him. That's not, I think that's like a kid's idea of romance or a boy's idea of romance. And for a woman, that's actually stalking. So right there, you sort of lost me. But, and I don't know, maybe if I'm getting ahead of myself, I really enjoyed season 2, or at least I enjoyed it much better than season 1. But I think the main problem I had with it for season 1 was a real lack of jokes. Like, I thought it wasn't such a bad science fiction show, but as far as jokes were, they were kind of few and far between. So that was my first impression, especially of season 1, was not as funny as it really should have been.
So Andrea, Conan O'Brien is an executive producer on this show. You have a bit of a history with Conan O'Brien. Do you have any thoughts about that?
It seemed like a very Conan thing. I think this is totally my impression. I don't know. Because I did not know about this until you brought it up for me and asked me to do this. It seemed to me like he was just an executive producer and didn't have much of a creative input into the first season. And this is I don't know if this is right or not, but it seemed like he had maybe more of a creative input into the second season, because the second season picked up as it was a lot funnier than the first season. That's my feeling on it.
Yeah, well, let's stick with the first season for the moment. I'll just say, like, according to my research, how this show came about is that Olin Rogers, I think years and years ago, posted a thing called Gary Space on YouTube that he just did himself or with a friend or something that's very, like, really, really low budget and just him basically doing funny voices, and it's pretty awful, actually. But that sort of like established the characters of Gary and Mooncake, and then there was something called New Form. I'm not actually sure what it was, but apparently they were giving sort of little grants to YouTube creators to kind of follow their passion projects, and he got a $15,000 little grant or whatever to do an actual pilot. But still, animation's pretty expensive, so he was only able to do like a 6 or 7 minute pilot. And so he did that, and they posted that on YouTube, and it actually got a lot of attention, and it attracted the attention of Conoco, which is Conan O'Brien's
production company.
Yeah. And so he was like, "Oh, this is cool." And so Owen Rogers, he's a pretty young guy. I don't know. I think he was probably in his late 20s, early 30s or something at this time. But he went out to meet with Conan O'Brien. Owen had no prior experience in television, I don't think. But so he kind of made some connections, and they connected him with this guy David Sachs, who has has had a very long career in television, to kind of help him be showrunner. And they pitched it to a bunch of studios, and they all wanted it. And TBS made the best offer, and that's how it became a TV series. So yeah, just a little background there. So how about Tom? What were your first impressions of Final Space?
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. Just watching the first, I remember the very first part where you're just kind of unclear what's going on, and they keep kind of showing you that he's dying and he's going to die, and I was like, oh, this is really intriguing. And then he's floating in space, right? His ship's been blown up. Yeah, and he's running out of oxygen, and there's like a bomb's going to go off or something. I'm getting the pilot confused with the show, I think, but anyway, I thought it was really intriguing, and then it was really hit and miss for me. I didn't hate it like Andrea did.
I didn't say I hated it. I just thought
I didn't think that Conan O'Brien was a total loser like Andrea said.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
This is where we're going tonight, huh?
No, I don't mean that at all. I just realized I'm making fun of myself because I just realized I put words in your mouth. So. But no, you didn't say that. I'm sorry. So I guess I didn't, I guess I didn't feel like it was a near miss. I guess it was hit and miss for me. There were times when I was like, this is awesome. And then there were times when I was like, oh, come on, what are they doing here? Like, what's the point of this episode? And actually, I felt like there were a lot of episodes that kind of were just there as sort of filler, but there were a lot of things that I thought really worked. I did think also, I do agree that there were times when they were like, okay, we're going to play on your heartstrings now. And I was like, oh, great, okay, here comes the heartstrings moment. There were some of those that really worked, though, but then there were other ones that were obviously just, they were really trying a bit too hard on some of them. But I thought it was really hit and miss. And I also agree, like, if I had been younger, like, this show made me feel really old because I was like, wow, I'm realizing that I'm 50 and that this is not the kind of thing that I enjoy anymore, but my 18-year-old self would have absolutely loved it, like wouldn't have been questioning any of it, I don't think.
So does Tom and Robert, do you both share Andrea's negative impression of Gary as a character from the outset?
From the outset, yeah. I was one of the people, and I guess there was a whole Reddit thread about this, but one of the people who found his way of speaking to be tough to get through. And I guess that's the style of speaking that Olin Rogers uses in the performances that he does. He does a lot of like spoken word, kind of like wacky stories. And he was using that same voice to act as a character, which really did not make much sense to me. I think as well, but a bigger issue though was the show clearly establishes that Gary, before he goes to prison, is a horrible human being. He's a thief. When he first sees Quinn, he decides he's going to, the Quinn is the woman he's in love with. He decides he's going to impress her by stealing another astronaut's uniform. He steals that guy's uniform by beating him up and drugging him, and then tries to talk to Quinn. We later find out that Gary's actions lead to that guy's death. That's later on in the series. And I'm just like, holy crap. And I didn't feel like the show explained how he went from being like that to being what we're supposed to believe is a slightly sweeter person. I mean, there were several times in the show where the other characters keep talking about how sweet and nice Gary is and how he puts other people ahead of him. But then we keep seeing scenes like, at the end of season 1, the annoying robot named Kevin sacrifices his life to save the ship. And when Gary sees his limp, lifeless body floating around in space, he's like, he thinks it's a joke. I'm like, what's going on with this show? Yeah. So it's all over the place. And let me tell you, if the show had committed to one or the other, if it said like, we're going to make this guy horrible and you're just going to think it's funny, I would have respected that. Or if it made him super sweet from day one, I would have respected that. But the show is ping-ponging back and forth with this guy. So sorry, Tom, I got a little too much there.
I have to say, it does actually make me laugh when he just like is really mean to Kevin, though. I admit that makes me chuckle. Yeah.
Sometimes
that I really liked. Yeah, I thought Fred Armisen. I read some stuff on Reddit that Fred Armisen was underused or he was wasted or something. And I did read the Reddit thread because they actually mention it in the first episode of season 2. Gary actually says like, apparently a lot of people on Reddit hate me or something like that.
Yep. Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, good. So I'll go check out Reddit. So I went and read it, and it wasn't so bad. Like it was like a lot of people were like, I can't stand that main character, but there was like, I don't know, like 10 people who chimed in. So I was thinking, okay, well, there's Reddit. You always get the people who are like have enough energy and anger to go and say something, and you don't know what the rest of the people out there are thinking. But yeah, I did kind of agree. I was like, he's too frenetic in a lot of it for me. So I also think, yeah. There was more of I thought there was more of a method to what was going on than Robert is saying, how he's ping-ponging back and forth. I didn't think he was ping-ponging, but I still thought it was wrong. Like how he did seem to be very devoted to his in-crowd, like to what's his name? Chugati there. the little blob.
Mooncake.
Mooncake.
He seemed very devoted to Mooncake and to Little Kato and to Quinn and to anybody who was in his circle except Kevin, which I thought was really funny that he hated Kevin so much. But then anybody outside of that, like whether they were a good person or not, he was just totally willing to kill them at a moment, just for whatever, just like offhandedly kill people. And which kind of, if you really like took him seriously, you would be like, this guy is like Charles Manson. He's like loves his in crowd and it just wants to kill everybody else or doesn't care if everybody else dies.
It's a deep statement on the polarization of American politics.
It could be.
Well, I'll say, I mean, because, my first impression, I agree, I just couldn't stand Gary at all. And the show just seemed like a copy of Futurama to me.
Yep.
And to the extent that, I mean, Gary, the relationship with Gary and Quinn just seems exactly like Zap Brannigan and Leela from Futurama. And then like Tribor looks kind of like Kip, and all the spaceships and everything all just kind of look like Futurama, maybe a little Star Wars mixed in there. So, so that was my big sort of initial impression, was that it just wasn't original enough. I guess, Andrea, sounds like you were also having some Futurama flashbacks.
Yeah, it was the same general characters as Futurama, and it could have been a little more original. But yeah, I mean, I have the same problem everybody else seems to have had with Gary as a character. Just not being relatable. I can't sympathize with him. Is he crazy? Is he a jerk? Is he all of these things? And, but as I said, that was season 1. It got better in season 2, but we'll get to that.
What did you think of the other characters besides Gary? So let me just explain if people haven't seen the show. So Gary, it starts out and he's like on a prison ship, serving out his sentence for destroying a bunch of ships that Tom kind of mentioned a little bit. And he has this robot Kevin, who's this sort of like orb with arms, who's supposed to keep him company and keep him from going insane while he's in sort of solitary confinement, but he can't stand this robot. And then there's the ship's AI, Hugh. Pretty quickly there's this anthropomorphic cat named Avocado, and then we also meet his son, Little Kato.
Mooncake.
And Mooncake, who's this little like green alien who flies around and can shoot energy beams out of his mouth. Those are sort of the main characters at the beginning, right? I don't know if I'm forgetting anyone. But so Andrea, so what did you think of those other characters?
They all seemed rather, stock characters to me. The incredibly smart and competent woman, the goofy sidekick, the cute fuzzy pet, so to speak. There was nothing. No barriers were broken with this. There was nothing very new in it to really hook me into it, which I think was also one of the problems with it. I just didn't see anything new. It was a rehash of a million different science fiction shows, and movies that I've seen. I actually started making a list of all the movies they were pulling from. This Futurama, Red Dwarf, Gravity, Moon, The Martian, Suicide Squad. And I mean, and part of that is making fun of the tropes, but also I felt like they just didn't transcend the tropes. They just used them as jokes and didn't go farther with it in any way. At least not past the way Futurama did. But Futurama is a 20-year-old show.
Yeah, well, yeah. So as I said, I mean, I was sort of like very lukewarm on the first couple episodes, and I do remember like some of the stuff that made me laugh. Like the first thing that made me laugh, and I think it might have been a couple episodes in, but it's when he's reunited with Quinn, and he's totally obsessed with her, and she doesn't know his name, but she's like, "Oh, hi Avocado, hi Frank, whatever." And she knows like all the robots who all look the same, and she doesn't know his name, and that was the first thing that I laughed at. But so how about Robert? What did you think of the other characters?
Yeah, I agree with what Andrea said. There wasn't too much new going on. I was kind of wondering what was going to happen with Avocado, and and I was kind of like, man, they really haven't done much with him. He's just kind of gruff, and he's a warrior or whatever. And then, spoiler, he gets killed, and I was like, well, that solves that problem. And the Quinn character, I think, was probably the best opportunity for the show to do something a little original. And, I think, and this is playing off something else Andrea said, I mean, I think quite a few viewers are going to be puzzled by the way she ends up kind of falling for Gary, which is by, I mean, there's some weird wish fulfillment going on here, but it's by watching those videos that he was making for her. Which I don't think, I mean, I think most women who would see something like that would call for a restraining order. So I thought that was a,
this is true. I can confirm this.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. The opportunity to do some other things with Quinn and maybe even show some flaws in her character. She's a little too like perfect and too competent and too like fearless and just too awesome to really relate to. So when we have a perfect character who ends up falling for somebody like Gary simply because she watches these weird videos, or at least that's the start of it, that felt like a missed opportunity to me.
Yeah. How about Tom? Do you have anything you want to add about all these characters?
I think there's a gap in my science fiction TV viewing. I didn't really watch much Futurama, and I watched a few episodes of that and a few episodes of Red Dwarf. So probably because of that, I kind of liked the other characters a lot, especially Kevin. I thought Kevin was brilliant. I thought the way he kept just like misinterpreting every situation and being like all excited and happy about his part in everything was, it just kept cracking me up because I don't know why, but I just loved that he was so out of touch with what was happening, and I don't know, I really enjoyed Fred Armisen in that role. And then the other characters I kind of liked. I liked that Mooncake was like, he was cute and cuddly, but he could destroy the universe. I thought that was really cool. I thought that was kind of different. And then Avocado, he was kind of just the tough warrior guy, but his son I thought was really a good character. I thought Little Kato was really a good character, and the part where Quinn turns to like him, I was cringing at the part where she's like watching all the videos and deciding like, oh, he really likes me. Like I too was like, this is, he's obviously a stalker. She would be like watching this and going, ew. But there was another part where I don't remember what happened, but I remember writing down that they actually pulled off Quinn liking him, and it was because she sees him doing something, and I think first she realizes that he'll like just sacrifice his life to save his friends, and they made her like eyes get bigger when she sees him doing something like that, and I was like, oh, that's kind of starting to work for me. And then there's a moment where he's like saying he's going to do something, and she says idiot, but she says it in a certain tone of voice that I was like, that actually worked for me. Like the way she said idiot, I could see where she's like, okay, this guy's a complete idiot, but he's kind of starting to grow on me. So so that's kind of how I felt about the characters.
Yeah, and so like I mean, I was not really at all impressed by the first couple episodes, but sort of like I would say halfway through season 1, I started warming up to the show a little bit. I started liking the characters more, and I think the show is reasonably funny. The the interplay between the characters, and I mean, to my mind, you just can't go wrong with people being exasperated by and mean to robots. That's a very Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy sort of thing. But just when he's, as I said, just when he's just like Kevin is trying to be so helpful, but he's so annoying, and Gary's just like, I hate you, Kevin. Like that just makes me laugh. And so So does anyone else think that did the humor start working better for anyone else as season 1 went on?
I jotted down a note here, episode 4, funnier and better, that it started to get funnier. The humor started kind of working for me around then. And then, I did feel that there were episodes that I was like, this is absolutely hilarious. And then there were other episodes, it didn't really kind of build for me throughout season 1. It kind of was like, oh, this episode's funny. And then the next episode, like, no, this is completely dropping the ball. I'm not sure if it was like a different writer in charge of this one or what happened.
Do you remember anything, Tom, that you thought was fun? That you're like, oh, that works for me?
I just thought a lot, like you said, Kevin, and I thought a lot of the a lot of the interplay between the characters. I'm trying to see in my notes if there were some quotes that I jotted down. But how about if I'm just going to comment real quickly that I found this note I said this show is a good gauge to show me that I'm turning into my father, because I vividly remember watching Monty Python for the first time when I was a kid, and then I could not wait to show it to him, and I watched it in front of him like 3 weeks later, and I was like looking over at him, and he just his only reaction was stupid. And I was so crestfallen. I was like, oh no, my dad, how can he not think this is funny? And then there was a lot of this show that I was like, this is stupid. And then I thought, no, my younger self would be looking at me going, you're turning into your father.
Mm.
But I'll if you want to skip to other people, I'll look for a couple of quotes. Oh no, here we go. I found one. So episode 6 of season 2. I liked that. Oh yeah. See, I didn't put the context. There's a line here. It's all right. You're new, and I apologize. I don't remember what the context was for
The
that.
Arachnotex.
Oh, that's
yeah.
right. It was the Arachnotex. You're right.
Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, one of them like makes some idiotic comment, and he's like, I don't know what's going on. The other one's like, it's all right. You're new.
It's all
And
right,
that struck
Jeffrey,
me
you're
as
new.
funny that. Yeah, that struck me as funny that these like immortal beings who are like in charge of weaving the fabric of reality, like one of them could be new. Like, I thought that was pretty funny.
Well, yeah, and one of them, I mean, the leader has like maybe a British accent, but at any rate, a very portentous voice. And then there's this other guy who sounds like very much more, vernacular. Yeah. And that's pretty fun. Like when that sort of juxtaposition, I did think that was pretty funny.
Yeah, me too.
But actually, Tom, when you mentioned the different writers, I have a note about that because I listened to an interview with Owen Rogers, and this is him talking about season 1. He says, with the first batch of writers we got, I knew what the show was, and I had to explain what the show was to them. And I tried. I bought movies like Sunshine and Moon and Interstellar and the new Star Trek stuff, and I was like, watch this. This is what I want it to be like. And the scripts that would come back would be very Futurama, very Rick and Morty. And that's because that's the hot thing. In Hollywood, a lot of Hollywood writers kind of write the same in a weird way.
That's true.
So it is. Yeah, I think they did have different writers doing different episodes and stuff, and and you can see like I think Andrea, you mentioned some of those, references to like Moon.
Yep.
But so I guess Tom and I started liking the show better as season 1 went on. I guess I'll say about the humor also. I thought it started out very bland and very safe. And so some of the stuff that started happening, like when Gary's wearing the skin of this alien and then meets the alien's family, and they're all like, Mom, you're alive. We thought you were dead. And then also like when Gary and Little Kato were like peeing all over the ship to mark their territory, like I didn't think that was actually funny, but it was at least not as bland as the stuff had been up till then. And I started like getting these little peaks of like, oh, this show is like starting to try to establish its own voice and be a little bit different and not just be Futurama or whatever.
Yeah.
I agree. And I love you just made me think of another moment where Gary and Little Kato like jump, or Gary and Avocado, I guess, jump. They're like, hey, let's jump for the catwalk. And they like jump off the edge of this thing, and they're going to do the thing that they always do in action movies, which is like jump into space and like land on this one skinny catwalk. And then they miss it, and then they just keep falling, and they're like, that didn't work out at all. I loved that moment. And then they finally do land on a catwalk, but they're going so fast by then that they just punch straight through it.
Yeah. So how about Robert? Did any of the humor start working for you as season 1 went on?
I really couldn't get into the humor. I feel bad saying that. I think I might be dead inside. I don't know. But I think for me, first of all, there was a lot of humor centered around butts. I think I started noting how many times we heard butt cheeks, buttholes, poop. Yeah. That's got old for me. The other thing was, and I think this carries into season 2, which is a lot of the humor was usually based around like one of two scenarios. Either Gary explains something to the crew and one of them or more of them don't get it, and then it leads to some sort of awkwardness or confusion. Or he meets an alien and they have some kind of initial misunderstanding, and then that leads to an awkward conversation that gets drawn out. Usually it ends with, Gary being like, wait, what? Why would you say that? That I think that was used too many times. And it made it that just started. I started noticing that over and over and over again, and it just I couldn't get into it. I mean, really, for me, I was more invested in the actual narrative arc, which I think once we got closer to the end of the first season, like I got to be more invested in that, so I didn't really mind that the humor wasn't working for me as much. I thought that was like a lower priority for me at that point anyway. So, you know.
Well, so Robert, I mean, you were previously on our panels on the Orville and Disenchantment, and those like had, to my mind, way more moments where I was just like grimacing at the jokes falling flat and just feeling embarrassed for the writers and stuff. Like way more than with this show. Do you agree with that, or did you think this was sort of on par with those shows? Actually, I'll say I thought the Orville got better as it went along, but you sort of in the first episode or two, I was just kind of like, ugh.
Yeah, I would say if I were ranking them, I would probably say Orville. Yeah, definitely got funnier as it went along. This one, I would rank it alongside Disenchantment in terms of how often I laughed. There were a lot of times where I think just because I was preparing for your show, I would sometimes say, "Huh, that's funny," and then I'd say, "Wait, I didn't actually laugh there. So was it funny? I don't know." So yeah, I think I would still rank it alongside Disenchantment in terms of like maybe not as much cringeworthy stuff, but I just some of the jokes just fell flat. And then I know we're going to get into season 2 later, but I thought that season, even more so than the first, had some of this more like manufactured awkwardness that took the place of actual jokes. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, let's get to that in a little bit. But I also wanted to ask you, Robert. I mean, you wrote this this post-apocalyptic trilogy with anthropomorphic animals, including at least one cat who's the hero, right?
Yes.
So, what did you think of as a sort of an expert on anthropomorphic cats? What did you think of Avocado and Little Cato?
Actually, they have some similarities to what I've written, and so I was looking forward to seeing more stuff from them. I wanted them to do more stuff. I actually was thinking Quinn was going to fall in love with Avocado, because that seems to be a better pair right there, right? And I've written about like interspecies love, so I felt like that I was really like, oh, maybe we're going to go there, maybe Gary's going to get jealous, but then Avocado gets blown up. I had a bigger issue with Cato's character in season 2. I think they had a really cool idea, but maybe we should save that for season 2.
Yeah, well, let's say. I mean, I do you think that they should have the fact that they were cats seemed to not play any role really at all. I mean, I guess the peeing to mark your territory actually I don't know if that's something cats do or not, but
that is something cats do.
There was nothing else. Cat, they could have just been anything other than a cat, and it wouldn't have made any difference, right?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I feel like they should have, I don't know, been licking themselves or coughing up hairballs or.
There was a hairball joke at one point, but
was there?
But it wasn't
up on cabinets or something. Yeah. But so Andrea, do you have anything else you want to add about what we've been saying?
Well, as far as the humor goes, especially for season 1, I wrote down for each episode like a joke if there was a joke that I thought was good, and it was few and far between. One joke in episode 2, there's episode 6 where they fly down to like a planet and there's music, like heavy metal music playing over it. And you think it's just like a soundtrack, but then one of them, like Avocado, says, "Oh, I can't hear you over the music," which was a very good joke. And then in episode 10, there's one of the robots comes and says something to Little Cato about him not dying like his father, and then he goes, "Oh, was that insensitive? I'm sorry." Like those are the things I'm looking for as far as jokes are, as far as jokes hitting. In season 1, that was it. And then in episode 8, there was one thing with this whole extended mustache thing. Mustache Gary. Like it went on and on and on. I'm like, what is going on? Like that's the sort of thing where they were going for weirdness and it just gets bogged down in what the hell's going on. So, like actual good jokes that hit were very few and far between. And I think as Robert said, I, at that point in season 1, was really more invested in the story arc, in the plot, in the actual plot, than actually watching it as a comedy. Like, it actually played out better as a science fiction adventure show than as a comedy, for season 1. If we're going to get into season 2, that's when I have even more opinions about the comedy, because it actually, to me, got a lot better.
Yeah. Well,
much
actually,
better.
Since you mentioned the music, though, I want to ask you. I mean, I thought the music and the visuals in the show were pretty cool.
I think they were fantastic. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree with that. The music was great. The use of music was great. And the animation was fantastic. It really hit on all the tropes of, like, somewhat, sappy science fiction, shows, using music to manipulate feelings and emotions, sort of winking at you and also genuinely doing it at the same time. So they were like, it was really well done.
Yeah. So like I said, I mean, I don't usually love gross out humor, but the when there was the gross stuff, like wearing the alien skin or peeing all over the ship, like, as I said, I sort of took that as an encouraging sign that the show was at least taking some risks. But then the thing that started really working for me, I thought, was when they introduced the Titans and this kind of horror element. It's almost like this Lovecraftian element where you have these giant monsters in space and they're like trapped in other dimensions trying to break through and all that. I thought that worked really well, and that felt fresher to me. That didn't feel like Futurama or like whatever, And you had this guy, I don't even remember now what the situation was, but you had this guy who sort of has these eyeballs floating around his head. I thought that was pretty cool.
Council of the 12.
Yeah. So, yes. So actually, I thought that the more horror elements actually was sort of, I think, sort of what got me to keep watching this show. I think if the Titans hadn't been introduced, I think I might have given up in season 1, but that sort of pushed me into season 2. Does everyone agree that the horror giant monsters in space stuff?
Oh, I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
And the animation was they're beautiful to look at. Like, the animation's fantastic.
Yeah, Bolo is really cool, really fun to look at.
It was funny because Bolo, I mean, every time he talked, I was like, God, I know this voice. Like, where do I know this voice from?
Yeah.
And I didn't, it wasn't until, he comes back toward the end of season 2 and finally I was like, all right, this is bugging me. I got to look up who this is. And I was like, oh, it's Keith David.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, so I get the voice acting, I think is great. I mean, to give the show credit, I mean, there's a lot of the technical aspects are really, really well done.
Yeah.
I mean, Andrea, do you have anything else you want to say about the voice cast? Because there's a shocking number of big names.
Yes, huge.
To this show.
That's the first thing I did was open up IMDb to see who was doing all the voices. But yeah, it was they got an amazing cast. I mean, Fred Armisen, Tom Kenny. Who else do they have here?
David Tennant.
Yeah.
My God.
That was the one that I kind of was not as psyched about because having watched Good Omens and I was like, okay, I know who this guy is. Then this one I thought to have him do this little kind of shrimp voice was kind of, I kind of wish they had him because what's the Lord Commander or whatever, his whole thing is that he's kind of got what they call little man's disease. He's like a little person who has all this power and he's angry all the time. But I thought it would have been kind of cool if they would have kept all that, but let him have let David Tennant do his thing with that voice and give it kind of a really rich, kind of a richer voice.
Yeah, I think I might agree with that because it was there wasn't anything spectacular to it. It wasn't David Tennant-y, shall we say?
Yeah.
But they did also have Ron Perlman as the father.
Yeah, that was cool.
But yeah, just when I went, because like I said, I didn't look at the cast until pretty much I was done watching the 2 seasons, and I was like, how did they get all these people to do this show? I guess does Conoco have a lot of connections or something? I guess, but yeah, I just couldn't believe how many big names there were in the cast.
Conan knows all those people. I'm sure he knows Fred Armisen. I'm sure he called people himself. I'm just speculating. I'm sure he knows Fred Armisen and Tom Kenny, and connections to everybody else. You know, he's been doing this for like 30 years, so I'm sure he knows everyone.
Yeah. All right, cool. So any other final thoughts about season 1 before we move on? Nope.
Yeah.
All right, season 2. As season 2 opens, we get a new ship, right? Sort of like it's like the Millennium Falcon, but missing like half of the front. And then we get 3 new characters, or 3 new crew members. So there's Clarence, who's this kind of like sleazy con artist, alien worm guy. And then he has 2 children, presumably adopted. I don't know if they ever explain that. Ash and Fox. And Ash is sort of like basically like a X-Men style superhero.
Yeah, she's a Scarlet Witch kind of.
Yeah.
And then Fox is this hulking guy with a sort of chain gun arm, and he's a sort of classic, giant with a heart, giant with a sensitive soul kind of character. Tom, what did you think of the new crew members?
Yeah, I really liked Ash. Fox was cool. I thought they were both kind of cool. Like I did think they mentioned at one point that they were adopted. That he like bought him and turned him into his kids. It was kind of like a Thanos thing, I think, with Gamora and Nebula. But I did really like her. I thought she had some cool things about her character. How she was like, this was a little bit. They could have kind of done something a little bit different with it. It was a little bit maybe sexist or cheesy when she was like got angry about the prom all the time, and then the way he would trigger her is by just mentioning the prom. Like they could have changed that from prom into something else maybe, but it was kind of clever how he had this thing that he figured out about her that if he said it, she would like launch into her power. And I kind of liked that, and I liked her power too, and I liked how they kept revealing little things about her. Like she had her hair over her face, and I think it was what's his name? The guy Tribor comes in and he's like, or somebody comes in and is like, oh, we're gonna fix
the mother.
This. Oh, was it the mother? We're gonna fix this hair, and she moves the hair out of the way, and there's like no eye there, and she's like, okay, we'll just put that back right where it was. So I really liked that, and I liked that she had this like, why do I have this power? She kind of had a lot of angst about her, and then at a crucial moment near the end, we're allowed to do spoilers, right?
Yeah.
Where Quinn gets killed, and then she remembers Quinn telling her like, well, maybe you'll figure out later why you have that power. And then she hears that voice echoing in her head, and then she realizes that she has that power to get the possessed Titan out of Avocado. So I thought, I don't know, her character to me was really intriguing. I liked her. I liked how she was always so like self-conscious about like how she would like light up with all this power and like raise off the ground and start screaming and all the flames would come out. I liked how she was like kind of like felt awkward about that. I don't know. I really dug her character. I thought Fox was okay. He was kind of cool, but I really liked her.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about it. She's kind of more, I guess, like the Incredible Hulk meets Dark Phoenix, right? Who did you say? Which superhero, Andrea, did you say?
Scarlet Witch, I thought.
Scarlet Witch, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but basically, like, she gets...
But yeah, Dark Phoenix is
she gets her power by being angry.
Yeah.
And so how about Robert? What did you think of those characters?
Yeah, I was intrigued. This situation, which starts season 2, reminded me a little bit of the opening episodes of Star Trek Voyager, where you had 2 crews sharing the same ship, and crews that were kind of diametrically opposed to each other. So I was definitely intrigued. I think I really would have welcomed an episode that was just about this twisted family that we're describing, because the resentment toward Clarence, but also the attachment to him was intriguing to me. And very often in a bunch of the episodes, what the family was doing sort of just became like a subplot. Like, for example, there's that episode late in season 2 where I think Clarence has this crazy scheme to marry the queen of some country, and his his two adopted children, try to help him, but that really felt like a subplot that went nowhere and then got resolved quickly with no real payoff and no connection to the relationship between the characters. So I think the show could have used an episode that was just with them and talking about their background, talking about, their weird relationship. And I think I really like the fact that somebody finally stood up to Clarence, but the fact that it ended up being Gary and not Fox and Ash didn't feel right to me. I thought the kids should have stood up to him, not Gary at the end.
Yeah, I agree about that Queen episode. I felt like that was just kind of filler or just there to kill time.
Yeah, they added 3 extra episodes for season 2, which I thought was a little much. Like they were stretching it. It felt to me. I don't know if that was because they moved to Adult Swim, or is it always Adult Swim? Or
no, it started on TBS, and I think they moved to Adult Swim. I'm a little vague on that, but I think it's something like that.
Yeah, it should have stayed at 10. But my feelings for the characters is that I liked Clarence a lot. I think a lot of the real humor came from that character. But I just thought there were so many characters in season 2. Like there's 8 or 9 characters. It's crazy. It was so disparate. And those, subplots that they did, like the one with the marrying the queen, the one where they, the guy tries to hijack the ship and to go to his wedding. They're out of the blue and they're stupid, but it gives you that stupid humor that was missing, that I think from season 1, personally, I felt. 'Cause Dave, you kept mentioning, the pissing scene. That was episode 2 of season 2.
I'm a little obsessed.
You're okay. I don't want to know why. But what I wrote when I was watching that, I wrote pissing, period. So fucking stupid. But I was laughing. I was finally or at least they're doing something really over the top stupid. But the best part of that episode was the dancing when he puts him into the dream sequence where he's in the happy part of his life where, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's the dance off with the
and he does the dance off. I was flat out outright laughing out loud at all of that. Cookie wife, cookie kids. I thought that was all really funny. That's where it started to actually be a comedy show for me. That's where the comedy really started to come out. And from there on, there are several places through season 2 that I just outright laughed out loud.
I think this show gets funnier and better as it goes. I mean, and it never becomes amazing to me, but I was pretty into it, by the end. I really like Clarence. He reminds me kind of Rigel from Farscape, the sort of sleazy, scheming alien, I like him a lot. I kind of felt like Ash and Fox, they were okay, but I felt like they didn't really have much to do in the show. I don't know, maybe they'll give them more to do in season 3, but they felt pretty superfluous so far.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'll have to say, probably the part I laughed the most at was the part where Gary says, "We're going after little Kato," and Fox says, "We're going to bring him back dead or alive." And Gary says, no, not dead, just alive, only alive. And he's like, "Okay, alive." And he's like, no, I mean it, alive.
Yeah.
And he's like, are you winking at me? And he's like, "No." He's like, "You're winking." He's like, "No, if anyone here is winking, it's you." I was just dying laughing at that whole part.
Yeah, and then he finally gets it across to him and he goes, "Oh, you really mean alive?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, that was a close one."
Yeah, there's a lot of really good. I have just had to bring up the best line in the whole series. Episode 3, season 2, the very end, where they drop the guy who tries to go to his wedding and they drop him out of the ship and he dies in front of his wife.
Yeah.
And then I think it's Clarence throws some rice out and he goes, "Rice! Now the birds will also die." And then they cut right to commercial. It's like,
no, that was Kevin, wasn't it?
Was it Kevin?
Now the birds will also die.
Yeah. And then they did a Kenny Loggins dance sequence in episode 4. So you win me right there.
Yeah, so, that one kind of struck me as a little too Star-Lordy, but I totally agree with you about episode 3. I thought that was one of my favorite episodes. It was very funny, and there was a line in there. Well, I didn't mean parent killer in a judgmental way, And then Hugh is in his like the AI is in this like inept body and he can't throw darts, so he's like in his own room by himself trying to throw darts, but he can't because he's too weak. So he just like gets really close to the dartboard and puts him in the dartboard.
Yeah, no, I have to say, like, Hugh in his like crappy body, and then his sort of passive aggressive relationship with Ava, who's the better new ship's AI. That really worked for me. I thought that was really funny.
Who is Jane Lynch, by the way?
Okay.
Yeah, she was great.
So Robert, did anything in season 2 manage to melt your cold heart here?
Well, I think it's the same situation as before, is where I was more invested in the story than the humor. So, I mean, I think the last 2 episodes of season 2 are really good, and not just they're pretty good, and not just relatively speaking compared to the rest of the series. I thought, because that's where they finally picked the narrative back up, I felt, and they kind of moved past some of these episodes that felt a little too filler, a little too info dumpy to me. But yeah, as far as the humor, I really I struggle with a lot of. I actually was a little. The scene where they kill this guy in front of his wife by dumping him out of the thing, I was actually a little like horrified by it, I have to admit. But I get the humor. It was a little shocking to me, because I think at that point I was still wondering, 'cause I think the person who was the most invested in that character was Fox, and he was like crying about the guy getting his wedding, and then the guy dies right in front of him, and Fox didn't seem that fazed by it. So I'm like, so what's Fox's deal? I don't know. Yeah, I guess the humor still was tough for me to break through. I think a lot of the humor in this season is dedicated to Tribor's character, which he was kind of hit or miss for me.
Me too.
So Tribor has this thing where it's
can someone just what is Tribor like? What I don't get that character at all. I mean, he's sometimes funny, but like,
his name is Tribor because he tries to bore you, but he can't. He just can't.
Is he a parody of somebody, or he seems really, really strange to me.
I don't know if he's a parody. I think he's kind of an original character. He starts out just being this kind of throwaway character who's just kind of inept, and then it turns out he's the leader of this underground resistance, and he's got 6 eyes, and he's really interested in fashion. Like, that's all. Like, if he's got like a scarf that's like a really good scarf, that's all he cares about. And they go a little too far with him. Like, some of the stuff they do is kind of surreal, but I think he's just kind of original.
It was interesting, actually, because it's sort of like, we mentioned Gary starts out being incredibly annoying, and they kind of like take a lot of his most annoying things and sort of transfer them off onto other characters as they get introduced, so that by the end he's like become basically the straight man.
Yep.
And then Tribor's got a lot of like the things that were so annoying about Gary to begin with, although it's less insufferable because he's not
the main character. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt about the overriding difference with season 2 is that Gary completely changed. Gary is now the actual protagonist and is a hero, as opposed to the crazy person he was in the first season. So they changed that up, and I think it made it better because now I have somebody I care about. And as you said, they take all these crazy things and offload them onto other characters, including Tribor, who most of the show I'm just like, who the hell is this? Like, why is this person here? Actually, what he reminded me of a little is Guardians of the Galaxy. Who are the people that he's who raised him? What was the bounty hunters who raised him?
Oh yeah.
You're asking the name of the race?
Yeah, well, the what they're called or something. Ravagers? Yeah. No, not Ravagers.
Oh, the Ravagers. Yeah, the Ravagers.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
That's kind of what he reminded me of. A little bit, because he shows up at the last minute with the whole bunch of ships.
But so Robert, you mentioned that you liked that the story was working better for you than the humor. So why don't we talk about that and what worked for you? I mean, I didn't love the collecting the keys thing. That seems kind of like lazy storytelling to me. But why don't you talk about what did you like about what story beats kind of worked for you in season 2?
Yeah, let me just emphasize, I'm talking specifically about those last 2 episodes. The ones before that, I think, really didn't pay off for me. Like a lot of, there was a villain that they introduced named Todd H. Watson, whose episodes are really just info dump episodes. The characters learn something and the episode ends. That's it. But I thought that the last 2 episodes at least had, they had these action sequences where the characters were actually doing things that were consistent with their character arc and that, had real significance to them. They weren't just for laughs. They actually had something to do with the plot. So I think that's what I'm complimenting mainly. I thought that, by episode 13, you had Kevin trying to sacrifice himself. You had Hugh and Ava working together after they had consummated their relationship finally, after so much sexual tension. You had other characters who were just doing things that seemed to fit with their character arc. So I just, Andrea mentioned how the season was way too long. I think that if they had condensed it, lost some of those filler episodes, and just had episodes like the last 2, I think it would have had a better impression for me, I think.
What did you think of Gary's mom? Because she's a pretty big part of the plot as it develops.
I mean, I applaud the fact that they have characters who have competing priorities. Like, we know what her priority is. Although hers is nowhere near as sympathetic as Gary's. It didn't totally work for me.
Well, she's trying to bring her husband back to life, right? I mean, that's fairly sympathetic, isn't it?
Yeah, but okay, this is tough for me to explain because it seemed to bounce all over the place for me. But she starts off by being a spy who's spying on him. She falls in love with him. The way that they break up made it feel like things were over, but then she regrets it and then tries to bring things back. Is that a good summary of what happened?
Yeah, I think that's about right, yeah.
Yeah, I was fine with it. I thought that she was she was like invincible, so like she was just this plot device that kept getting dropped into the episodes where it's like out of nowhere Cheryl appears and she's infiltrated the ship and she's stolen all the keys again. You know what I mean? Like she was almost too like awesome.
Yeah, well, that's sort of like the same thing with Quinn, right? It's like they can't have female characters that aren't totally badass and awesome. Right? Am I forgetting anyone?
Yeah.
I mean,
no.
Yeah, and look, it's cool that they have people doing that, but just, the character, sometimes those characters, like, they need some more, like, flaws and so forth, weaknesses.
Well, it's not that she didn't have flaws. I mean, she was pretty flawed. She was, like, totally irresponsible, fell in love with Gary's dad and then had a kid with him. It fell in love with him started out spying on him, fell in love with him, had a kid with him, and then hated the kid because the dad was dead and wanted to bring the dad back, and so treated the kid like garbage and abandoned the kid and was basically crawled inside of a bottle. So, and then was, I think she was fairly flawed, but I guess you're saying she wasn't flawed in the fact that whatever she wanted to do, she could just do because she was so strong and badass.
Yeah, I get that. That's part of it. Yeah, but you're totally right. Yeah, she's flawed in the sense that the show makes it quite clear that she just has zero feelings for Gary. That made some of the interactions between them a little unclear to me because like Gary barely knows her. She makes it quite clear that she's ready to kill him and let Quinn die. So some of the scenes where they're like possibly going to reconcile, I'm like, just shoot her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there's this whole thing where he's like, you're my mom. Doesn't that mean anything to you? And that didn't really work for me at all because there's just no there's no reason for me to care about their mother-son relationship at all.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, the relationship was they kept acting like because she was the biological mom that she really did have some kind. It was like a Darth Vader thing. Like there's good in you. I can feel the good in you, but you could kind of tell from having watched all of it that just wasn't there. So the argument really was kind of one-sided.
And the other thing that was confusing for me was I'm still not entirely sure what Gary's crew is actually attempting to do. Like, are they attempting to actually reverse the events of season 1, which is where the Earth gets destroyed and all this other stuff, or are they just trying to save Quinn?
Yeah, they're just trying to save Quinn. That's what kind of strikes me about the I was talking earlier about how, like, Gary, it's not that he bounces back and forth. It's just that he cares about the people he cares about, which there's like 6 of them. And then everybody else, if they die, like if the whole universe dies, he's like, well, as long as my friends are okay, everything's fine, which makes him kind of a kind of a limited range psychopath or something like that. So yeah, the fact that he has this ability to go back in time and change things, or like, I don't know if it was back in time so much as like go to final space or whatever, but the only thing he's concerned with saving is Quinn, and then everybody else who died, the whole planet Earth, he's just like, oh, whatever. That's too bad. Sucks that happened.
That gets even weirder because, if again, they're just trying to save Quinn and not necessarily trying to reverse what happened before, that means that sorry, spoiler coming up, but when Nightfall decides to sacrifice herself, that decision doesn't really sit right with me, because, like, if she was sacrificing herself to save all the people on Earth, good for her. That's awesome. That's a cool moment. But she's sacrificing herself so that Gary can be back together with the other Quinn. It seemed weird to me, right? I mean, it's like her purpose in the show is to make Gary happy.
Well, I kind of got that part because I felt like she really cared about Gary. Like, she was the one person in the show who I felt like I could really feel that she cared about Gary and she wanted to be with him. She wanted a relationship with him, and he was like, oh, this is all I've ever wanted. But then he's like, but you're not the same Quinn. I want that Quinn. And then she kind of got it, and she was like, okay, well, I do want you to be happy. And I think she really, really did. It felt to me like what she did there was kind of pure, even though, yeah, it would be better to sacrifice herself to do more than save that. But
yeah, I want to get Andrea back in here. Andrea, do you have anything you want to add to what we've been saying?
Well, I'm just thinking about what Robert was just saying. Actually, it didn't strike me, that sacrifice at the end struck me more, well, half as a sacrifice, but also as I'm not going to get what I want, so I want the other version of me to get it, and there's no reason for me to stick around, so I might as well leave. It was kind of like not a sacrifice, but also a suicide. Personally, that's how it felt to me, but maybe I'm just getting overly romantic about it. Romantic in a 19th century novel kind of way.
Yeah. Well, let me say too, I mean, I think that one of the things when Tom was talking, I mean, I think one of the things that's weird about the dynamic here is that it's basically like the plot is about this guy who, like, will do anything to rescue the woman he loves. But then the humor is like, isn't it funny when people act like sociopathic assholes? And like those two things just don't go together at all. And most sort of, pointedly in the case of Gary, where it's like, you're like, who is this guy? Because he has no consistent character, because like the jokes are sort of like grafted on to him in a way that doesn't fit his character at all. Like, it would be one thing if the jokes were all about like, he's so idealistic and romantic and the universe just keeps like not living up to his expectations of how life should go or something. Like, that would be funny and it would be consistent with his character. But if he's just like, fuck this alien, I'm going to kill him. Like, it doesn't, it's all like sort of a weird mishmash of conflicting character traits.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Was there an option of being able to reverse what happened and save the Earth? Because the whole thing with time travel is and this was brought up by that weird character that looked like Jar Jar Binks that pops up when they go back in time. If you mess up the timeline, it ruins things, so you can't. So it wasn't so much as fixing time to save Quinn, it was going into final space in order to save her, as opposed to going back in time to save her. So I don't know that saving the Earth and fixing what he did was actually an option.
Yeah, that's a good point. That I'd have to watch it again, but I think you're probably right.
Yeah, I don't think it's an option to save the Earth. Like, the Earth is gone. So.
Yeah, but I think it says something that after watching 23 episodes of this show, we're kind of like vague on what are they even trying to accomplish?
Yes.
Like, something's not
I agree.
being communicated clearly enough here.
Yeah, 'cause
I there's a lot of inconsistencies and stuff that I very, very actively in my head went, I have no idea what's going on here, but I'm just not even going to go back and try to figure it out. Which I don't know. Is that a successful show, or is that a failure? I can't tell. I continued watching.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one of the big problems with the show is the lack of world building. I mean, there's essentially zero world building in this show. You know, it's like all the background is just filled in with Star Wars, basically, or like whatever.
Yeah.
And so like, and you contrast. I was contrasting that with Futurama, right, where like Fry goes into the future and there's like suicide booths and like Robot Nixon is president and people, they call Christmas Xmas and they're like, Christmas, what's that? You mean Xmas? Like there's like this, even if it's goofy and like everything, it's there's this sense that this is a world that exists and kind of makes sense and is consistent at some level. Yeah. And if I have like one big problem with this show, it's that the background just feels totally like, like a lot of shows that have like the Bible, where it's like, this is the Bible for our show, like, and I feel like there's no Bible. Like, I can't imagine there's a Bible for this show. Like, it's like an index card or something. Like,
no, they were literally pulling from every piece of science fiction ever made in the past 30 years. I mean, everything was grafted on here and there, and just thrown into it was like a mix. It was like a mixed tossed salad of science fiction tropes.
Yeah, but even if it's the fact that it's derivative isn't necessarily the problem. It's just that, like, I mean, that's a problem, but a bigger problem to my mind is that I don't know what's possible and what isn't in this universe, or like, it's like what was it, the Guard? I forget what it's called, the Galactic Guard or whatever.
Infinity Guard?
Like the Infinity Guard. Now they're all working for the Lord Commander now, and then it's just like nothing seems, nothing. I just don't have a sense. Yeah, that's my problem. I don't have a sense of what's possible and what's not in this universe, and so like the stakes feel. I don't know what the stakes are really of anything.
Yeah, well, you're just along for the ride as opposed to investing in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, were you going to say something, Tom?
Well, especially there was like episode 11. It was just really frenetic and very surreal. There was just all kinds of bizarre stuff going on. The only thing
which one was that? Episode 11?
That was the one where Mom is. I'm just like looking at my notes. I don't 100% remember what episode it was, but I remember the one thing that tied it together was that Clarence was kept shifting skins. He was like a snake rat.
Yeah, speaking of like not knowing what's possible in this universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one really just kind of uncorked everything, where I was like, okay, so Clarence is actually a snake rat wearing a costume, and he's like all these different things. And I was just like, okay, I've completely lost touch with what's going on. And they kind of brought it back together at the end, but then I was like, okay, you brought it back together, but why couldn't you just cross this episode out and like not go through all that?
Yeah, I totally agree. See, Robert, I'm turning into you now. Now I'm getting all bitter and angry.
Thank you for throwing that in there.
And I don't mean bitter and angry in a derogatory sense.
Right, of course. You don't mean dead inside in a derogatory way. I get it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean that in a totally neutral way. I guess I'll also just note, I mean, this kind of goes along with my no world building thing, but, I went back and listened to our Disenchantment panel that we were all on. And I was complaining in Disenchantment that there was no social political commentary. There was no like references to obscure science fiction or like just geeky references really to anything. And I feel like that's kind of the case here. There's not really like, I like the characters a lot and it's funny to watch them interact with each other, but there's not really anything to think about while you're watching this show. It doesn't really engage my brain particularly. And, that's another thing I would just want to see is just, because the reason I watch science fiction is because I want to think about things. I want to consider weird new societies and ideas concepts I haven't considered before and things. And, I'll contrast this with, I made a couple of notes. So like some of the episodes of Futurama I really liked, for example, is, there's like this mind swapping machine, but then once two people have swapped minds, they can't swap back. There's this episode with a 10-second time machine where you can go back in time, but only 10 seconds. there's a time machine that only goes forward in time, and so once you start using it, you can't get back to where you started.
Wow.
And then in Rick and Morty, there are these aliens, and they pretend to be your friends, and they implant fake memories into your head to make you think that you've known them your whole life, even though they just showed up. So there's like, and those are cartoons, they're funny and everything, but they have like these ideas where I'm like, holy shit, that's a really cool idea. And Final Space, it needs more like ideas, it needs more something conceptual.
You know what they need? They need an actual science fiction writer.
Ah. Are you for hire?
It's really cold here, and I'm starting to think LA sounds like a good idea.
It's a surprisingly consistent theme of our panels, how much they need us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
This is not the first time that's come up. But Tom, you were about to say something.
Well, there were a few ideas that I really did like in this series that I was like, okay, they actually, because at first I was like you, I was like, there's no like ideas here. It's just all like, hey, look at these people are in space and they're doing silly things. But there was the whole idea of, is it Ava and Hugh stuck in the same body? I thought was pretty cool. Like that they're really attracted to each other, and then she like downloads into his body with him. And he's like, "Oh, I'm friends with myself without benefits." Like, I thought that was pretty funny. But I thought it was really cool how like nobody knew that they were in the same body. Like they're like, "Let's not tell anybody." And then they were like, she was finding out things that she could do with his body that he never knew he could do. Like, "Oh, I can fly." I never knew that. She's like, "Shh, quiet." And I don't know. I thought that was interesting. Like two consciousnesses in the same body, in love with each other, and like who gets to drive. And I don't know. I thought that was a neat concept. And I think there were a few other concepts like that throughout the show that were kind of fun to me.
Yeah, I actually thought the show would have benefited a little if they had just answered the question of why the Infinity Guard would have sided with Lord Commander. Like, what was going on in the society that would make them suddenly go for the wacko? Gee, there's some relevance there to our current situation, isn't there? So...
Yeah, that was kind of just thrown out there, wasn't it? That was kind of bizarre.
Yeah, it was just like, they're on his side now, and we don't know why, and they don't seem to be getting anything out of it because their home planet has been destroyed, so...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe he mind controlled them, but I don't think they ever really explained that.
Right.
They don't explain a lot of things. It's just kind of like, well, here it is. And like I said, I was just like, there was so much of that, I was just like, all right, fine, whatever. Because there was at one point right at the beginning where I was like, I kind of like was rewinding. I'm using an old word, but I was to try and figure out what the hell was going on. And after a while, I was just like, oh, fuck this shit. I gotta go. I gotta watch. And, I gave up.
There are three episodes at least that are mostly hallucinations. And it just goes from one wacky image to another until finally Gary learns something, and then the episode is pretty much over. And so that is part of this issue where it's just, very cool visuals, but as David said, not much to really like think about or expand your understanding of things or understanding of these characters.
Yeah. I guess my other note here about the visuals is that there's no visual humor in the show almost at all, in terms, like in, I don't know, in Futurama or something, they might go to a spaceport and there would just be a sign in the background that was kind of funny or something, like I don't remember anything. Like if you were just to watch this with no sound, there's almost nothing that's funny to look at. Maybe some of the slapstick stuff, I guess, but there's not really a reason to rewatch the episodes either. Like, there's not like just stuff going on in the background where like, oh, I didn't catch that the first time, but now, unless maybe I just missed stuff, but it doesn't, I'm not like, and I enjoyed, particularly, as I said, I enjoyed season 2 just fine, but I don't think I would go back and rewatch it because I feel like I kind of got everything that there was to get the first time through.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. A lot of times people will complain that the humor was about a comedy show was too many sight gags and not enough verbal humor. But I've never heard that complaint before. But now that you say it, you're right. I don't remember. I was trying to think of sight gags I saw, and I don't remember any.
Throwaway jokes. There were no throwaway jokes. Yeah,
and it's and now I'm like I said, I'm getting all bitter and angry. But I mean, I was pretty into the show by the end of season 2, and I do really like the characters. I mean, I don't know, and I can imagine. I mean, there's and the visuals of the characters are really good and are really appealing, and I can imagine, it's the kind of thing I would want to get a little Kato, bumper sticker or something. You know what I mean? There's something really, just grabby about those characters, and and so yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot to like in the show.
Could I mention the thing about Little Kato that I brought up earlier when we were talking about season 1, real quick? The episode where Little Kato gets stuck in the time warp and ends up living 60 years on the other side of the ship. That made me think a lot of the the Inner Light, in Star Trek Next Generation, which is where Picard lives another man's life.
I wrote that note down as I was watching it.
I was so intrigued by that. I liked the way it was handled. The whole thing where he was talking to his father, but really he was typing out the dialogue. I mean, I really was into that episode. And I remember when he comes back and it turns out that he remembers the 60 years, I said, oh, wow. Are we really, we're going to do this where, this is going to be an old, angry, lonely 6-year-old man in a kid's body. And the very first scene of the very next episode, he's back to being like, hey, we're going to zap the guys and save the universe. And I'm like, okay, so we abandoned this amazing development we had. This is way more interesting than all the other developments. I was really into that, and then kind of bummed that they didn't follow through on that. Although, sorry, to tack on to what David said. Yeah, I think I was a little more positive the last couple episodes just because I like some of the action. And I kind of hope that if they're going to do season 3, they really stick to their commitment to having it be in this final space realm. I think they, the writers and maybe even the producers might be tempted to say let's come up with some loophole where they go back to Earth and have an awkward date episode or something, but to me, if this season ends with them going to final space, so let's make season 3 really, really weird and wacky and maybe address some of the originality issues that you all were raising,
Yeah, well, speaking of ideas that they raised that don't get picked up, I mean, there was this part where Gary says to his mom, how can you be working for this evil space god, basically? And she's like, no, you're the one who's working for the evil space god. And I was like, whoa, mind blown, and that's more interesting than anything else that happens in the show. The idea that, they don't know which one is the evil space god, and or maybe both of them, and they have to deal with that, and it seems like, and that could totally come back. I mean, even though I guess they did let Bolo out of his cage and everything, but but yeah, if they're going to go with what Robert's saying and make it more in the realm of the evil space gods in final space, the idea of that you just don't know which of them to trust, if any of them. I mean, you can make the whole show about that. And that's, again, like I was saying, I mean, just much more interesting than just kind of, warmed over Futurama kind of stuff. All right. So, let's see, we're pretty much out of time. I don't know if I have any other notes here. I don't know. I guess I'll just throw it open. Oh, wait, I did have some listener comments. Let's see. What are the listener comments? Amin Fuladi says, watched season 1 on Netflix and absolutely loved it. Been waiting for season 2 ever since. David Machalik, I haven't seen it, but I know Olin Rogers is involved, so it's on my list to watch eventually. McKinney Edwards says, I would classify it as being on the mildly entertaining side. I bought season 1 on iTunes and don't regret it, but probably won't buy further seasons. Serge Boyvin says, I don't know about the US, but here in Canada, it's on Netflix. It's on my list after I finish Future Man. And Linda Bond says, I'd never heard of it and now just realized it's on free-to-air SBS Viceland in Australia. So it sounds like if you're pretty much anywhere except the United States, you can watch it for free. So if you're listening to this and you're outside the United States, you might as well give it a shot if this sounds interesting to you. You don't have to pay anything. We all had to buy it on iTunes. But I don't know. I mean, I like to do my part, as I said, to support science fiction humor. And, there was enough stuff to like in here that I'm not sorry I watched it. Probably won't watch season 3 unless I hear
Good things.
Good things about it. But I don't know. I mean, every episode, the theme music's great. Every episode when the theme music would be playing in the intro, I'd be like, oh, I'm kind of like excited to watch this.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's like ingredients there, and it'll be interesting to see if they can, make everything work. But it's like at the moment I can't. There's just in the show right now. There's nothing to make me say to anyone, oh, you got to watch this, the way that I would about Rick and Morty or something. But I wouldn't discourage if you've watched Rick and Morty and you want to watch another cartoon in a similar vein, I mean, I wouldn't discourage you from watching this at all. But yeah, I mean, that's what the show needs is just something really compelling about it to make you watch it. Not just kind of like likable characters having adventures. I just think science fiction needs more than that. All right.
I think overall they need a science fiction writer. I will put that out there again, guys. Hire a science fiction writer.
Yeah, well, like Rick and Morty, apparently they have a real hardcore science fiction reader on the writing team, and you can definitely tell. That makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
I got to agree. I hadn't really thought of that, but when you guys started talking about that, how it needs more ideas, I think, yeah, the kind of thing that would make you kind of stay awake at night and think like, well, how would that work? Like, that's crazy. Like, there isn't really much of that in there. And you're right, it would benefit a lot from a science fiction writer just sitting down and saying, well, maybe we could do an episode about this kind of idea. Although the little Kato gets stuck in the time warp kind of thing was sort of that kind of thing. Like, oh, what if you were a 60-year-old person trapped in a teenage kid's body? Like that, like you said, that was kind of a cool idea that they didn't run with. But yeah, if they had a lot more of that kind of mind-bending stuff in there, then it might be a lot cooler.
I'm just reminded, Tom, I don't know if you remember this, but you and I went to the Clarion Writers Workshop together in 1999, right. And one of our instructors was James Morrow, yeah. And he said offhandedly one time that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is just funny and doesn't offer serious commentary or anything like that. Yes. And and we had a conversation afterwards where I 100% disagree with that. I mean, like the president is is this sort of vainglorious fool, and the whole and I like the BBC radio drama version the best, so that's the one I would recommend people check out. But it just captures to me, the whole thing just captures to me better than anything I've ever experienced. Just the absurdity of the universe and how nothing makes sense and how people have all of these, pretensions and all these expectations, and the universe just doesn't care at all, and nothing works out the way that you think it should. So I guess, I don't know, Tom, if there's anything you want to say about what Final Space could learn from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in terms of just feeling a little bit more weighty in the context of this sort of goofy science fiction milieu.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you and I have discussed also how Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, people always malign it for not having a plot or for being plotless, but my argument is that it has a very serious metaphysical plot, which is that it starts out with this guy who's got he's just totally feckless, and then he ends up, and he can't, the universe is always throwing all this crap at him that he can't deal with, and he's so like nerve-wracked at the beginning. And then by the end, because the universe keeps throwing all this stuff at him, he just kind of learns to rise above it and be like, just screw all of this stuff. Like, I am going to learn to fly because it's so absurd. Like, I'm going to learn to fly without a plane. And he just kind of masters it until at the end, he's kind of this confident in his own skin person. And maybe Final Space could learn something from that in terms of, like, figure out who Gary is. Does he not give a crap about anybody? accept his friends, and he just doesn't care if anybody else dies, and his friends are cool with that. I don't know. That just feels kind of wrong to me in some way. Like, is he? They say, I'm going to go back to this again, Andrea. They say you should have a save the cat moment at the beginning of your. I'm sorry to keep bringing up the film school references, but they say you should have a save the cat moment at the beginning of your movie where you show the hero save a random cat that he doesn't have to save, to show the hero as somebody you could root for. And I think Gary is a person his friends could root for, but heaven help you if you're not one of his friends. So the audience can't really root for the guy because you're like, oh, if this guy saw me on the street and had to like get a key or something and I was in the way and it meant like he could casually just kill me, he would. So it's hard to root for a guy like that. Maybe if they like went on some kind of metaphysical plot with him where they're like, let's shift him somehow into somebody that you could actually, I don't know, maybe if they could kind of pay more attention to that, figure out what his ground is, figure out what the character's ground is, and just kind of make it feel more real that way, even if everything else is insane, at least make it feel more real internally to the characters. I don't know, now I feel like I'm just kind of bullshitting, but I feel like it's something like that.
I agree with that 100%. I mean, yeah, the issue is like, who is Gary and why should we care? And yeah, and this whole 2 seasons has basically been about him rescuing Quinn, and that's been his goal, and so now he has, and so this is as good a time as any to sort of reset his character and be like, so wait, who is this person and what is his goal now, and who's he going to be moving forward? And yeah, and just have him have a goal that makes sense and is consistent with his character and that he cares about, and and let the, like, I mean, and as I said, they started doing this, to a substantial extent so far, but offload the like goofy, wacky, sociopathic stuff that doesn't fit his character at all off onto the other characters, and just let him be the hero, and let him be the emotional center of the story. That's what it seems like to me it should do.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we're pretty much out of time. So why don't we wrap things up there? Robert, Robert, do you have any final thoughts? Anything you want to
add? Do you want to hear my impersonation of Tribor?
Yeah, sure.
So Tribor starts every sentence with a question and then answers it. So every time he appeared toward the end, I was like, is Tribor annoying? He is. So that was where I got with Tribor. I like the fact that he was competent though toward the end. That was actually kind of enjoyable to see him actually like get his act together. But there you go. There's my final. And one more thing. There's something inspirational about the show because the way it came about. I mean, this is someone who had this project he was working on and got it in with a major network, and like there's a lot to learn from that. I'm intrigued. So there you go.
It kind of reminded me of the THX 1138 story. A little 7-minute project becomes an actual movie.
Yeah, and I mean, I listened to some interviews with Owen Rogers, and I mean, he seems very sincere. It seems like he cares a lot. It seems like he put a lot of work into this, so I feel a little bad dumping on it as much as I have. But, I just hope that it can, it's obvious that this isn't cynical. It's not, just like focus groups. It's like obvious that he has passion, and he says he has a plan for 6 seasons. So if each season improves as much as season 2 did over season 1, this could be really great. And I just hope that passion pays off, and he's able to. And I, like I said, he's new to television and everything. So I'm pulling for him. I hope that the show lives up to his evident passion.
I agree with that 100%. It's a triumph just to get where he is right now. And he's, and I don't mean this in a condescending way. He seems like a very young artist and a young writer. And he's kind of learning as he goes, it seems to me. And the character in the show changed a lot between season 1 and season 2. So hopefully, it continues to grow and becomes a real success for him.
Yeah.
There. There's me being a condescending old lady to this nice guy. Somebody who seems like a really nice guy.
Yeah. All right, so let's wrap things up there. So we've been speaking with Andrea Kail, Tom Gerencer, and Robert Repino. So thanks everyone so much for joining us.
Thanks, Dave.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you.
And that was our panel. So big thanks again to Andrea Kail, Tom Gerencer, and Robert Repino for joining us on the show. And remember that Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is made possible thanks to support from listeners like you. So if you enjoy the show and want it to continue, please sign up to give us $1 or $2 per episode over at patreon.com/geeks. And if you'd rather make a one-time contribution, you can do that via check or PayPal over at geeksguideshow.com/crowdfunding. So big thanks again to everyone who's contributed. We really appreciate it. All right, so that was our show. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is a production of Wired.com. For more information about the show, visit geeksguideshow.com. To learn more about your host, visit davidbarrkirtley.com. Music and voiceover produced by yours truly, Jack Kincaid. If you enjoyed this program, tell your friends. If you didn't enjoy it, tell no one. Thank you for listening.